Hello, what's up? Um, Here's a video. I've seen it before. I think it's actually rather hilarious. Um, it's a video by a guy with a sense of humor that's also intelligent and also a real photographer. Um, his name is Zach Arias. I've never talked to the guy personally. I think his videos are intelligent and down to earth and accurate, and it's called Crop or Crap, and he goes over the absurdities of people. This is my summation. Pissing and moaning about the math of things and crop sensors, and of course I've done a lot of videos on crop sensors. Here we actually have a DX crop sensor, and here we have one from a point and shoot, which I ripped it out of the camera that my magnet ate yesterday. And of course either one of these will actually make exquisite 8x10 prints. I mean, just absolutely exquisite. And this is a DX crop sensor, okay? This isn't even a full frame sensor. And this is that tiny little sensor. That little bitty bit right there, that's the sensor from the point and shoot. It's a Nikon point and shoot. Beautiful 8x10s from either one of them. Obviously, you don't have a lot of ability to change anything in them. But I actually wanted to add on an article, and I'll send you the link is below, and then the link to his video, which is not only unlike some other people's videos, which are entertaining, but they don't actually tell you anything. They're actually informative. And this is all stuff that I knew because, back in photography school, I was hauling around in Calumet 4x5, and back then, I think he's the same age as me. I could be wrong. Back then, we would make fun of people that shot 6.45 because 6.7, and I had a pair of 6.7 Pentaxes, and I love the damn things. It's huge, huge negatives. We'd make fun of people shooting 6.45 Mamias and whatnot. We call it the crop, or we call it the 35 millimeter of film. He makes note of that in the video. And so it's always, a pissing match, and ultimately, what are you going to print? Are you going to print out giant landscape shots and giant portrait shots? Fine. Write it off on your taxes and buy a full frame sensor camera, and shoot full frame. Perfectly good idea, valid. However, it is the case, and I pointed out a lot of consistencies on these other YouTube channels, because there is a tremendous amount of information out there. And one person actually that, I'd corrected them on several of their errors. They actually keep emailing me, and I don't email them. And I'd have to ask you, who do you think is wrong? A person that actually, of course we all make mistakes, but I'd have to point out to you, who is at fault? The person that makes incorrect statements, or the person that points them out? It's like attacking the little kid for saying, hey, the emperor's got no clothes. They're gonna hang the kid for saying the emperor's got no clothes. Am I at fault for pointing out someone's errors? We all make mistakes. Life is short. It doesn't matter. Correct the errors, or do a lot more, error checking before posting the video. So I'm not at fault for any of this, but I kind of find that sort of mentality sophistic, and it's kind of egregious, because as a Platonic truth seeker, you should always want to know, and this is the reason why. This is why Platonic truth seekers love the truth. If you're right, that's good. That means you're on the right track. If you're wrong and someone corrects you, then you should love that, because that points you in the right direction. So you should be happy being either right or being wrong and being corrected, because everything makes you stronger. You're pointed in the right direction, kind of like beating on a sword to make it sharper and better. All of that work makes it something better. And this is not about personalities. It's about facts versus inaccuracies, errors in statements. So it's certainly nothing personal, and I'm not going to get personal with anybody, because this has nothing to do with personal views, or how someone looks, or whether you think that they're gross, or any of this other stuff. I know exactly what I look like. But I'm behind the camera, not in front of the camera, so that's kind of where it matters. Anyway, I think you should check out Zach Arias' article. He goes on, let me quote him in the perfect short form to be in league with a fair use policy. He says, well, so-and-so, he's referring to a husband and wife team, recently made a video going into the deep differences of sensor size in respect to aperture and ISO. He says there's a lot of math in his video. Some of his points have been hotly contested, yada, yada, yada. And then he goes, but honestly, my dear, I don't have a damn to give. He basically says, I don't give a damn. And then he says, do you want math or do you want moments? He calls it moments. I mean, it doesn't matter what you call it. He's referring to the arts. So you want math or do you want moments? Math or moments? What defines great photography? You know, great photography is art and science. I've said that many times in some of my earlier videos last year. You know, you have to be half scientist and half artist. And you can certainly get by with being a whole lot less scientist, because if a good photographer, back in photography school, some of the best photographers in the world dropped by, and they didn't know jack crap about what the hell a good lens was or wasn't. I mean, as far as what they knew, they didn't know. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, I talked to some of them. We go out and shoot. Remember a beach shoot once in Ormond Beach? And they just don't know. But what they've got, they know how to work really, really well. And, you know, their stuff is globally loved, and, you know, they know how to work what they got. You know, there's no sexual innuendo there. The point is that they don't have to know all this science. They know what the hell a good print is, and how the hell to be an expert in light manipulation, or to capture good light and composition. You know, two things make a professional photographer only, and one of them isn't math. It ain't math. So a lot of these other videos that have tons and tons of math in them, that's all good. You know, it's good to know up to a point, and the point is about that important. The artistry and the composition and the lighting especially, it's way the hell up here. But, you know, if you want to say it's half art and half science like Zach does, you know, that's perfectly fine. I'm not disagreeing with Zach at all. I mean, he's just making a general point. And he goes on to say, here's what I know. And the link is to the article below. I think he's a good guy. I don't know if he, you know, I've never talked to him at all, so he seems like a really cool cat. Anyway, he goes on to talk about his Fuji crop sensor, and then he says, trying to quote someone else, but Zach, I have the math that says, and then he says, I'm so glad you brought math. Love it. Yummy, yummy math. That's why I'm a photographer, because I love math so much. That's why I studied the likes of Avedon and Mary Ellen Mark. It's because of their gorgeous math. Every time I see a beautiful photograph, I grab a calculator because math turns me on that much, you know? Very well stated. Kudos to you, Zacharias. You should check out his channel. I think he's a cool cat. And, you know, I don't give a damn if I mean, I've never talked to the guy. I don't give a damn if he hates me or anything like that, or he thinks I'm a jerk. He's accurate. I will support anybody. I mean, they could, someone could, you know, say that I'm the most horrible person in the world, or I'm just you know, I don't give a damn. But if someone states the truth and something that's accurate and well said, then kudos to you, because I'll stand behind you 100%. I don't give a damn what anybody thinks about me. I just don't. And I support him and what he's actually said regarding this, because he is 100% correct. And that's what's important. Knowing the science, I mean, it's good. You know, it's partially the reasons that I make these videos, is to state, you know, eliminate a lot of, man, there's a god-awful lot of disinformation on YouTube. And, you know, some of these people, you know, some of people openly declare that they're, you know, working with Sony, or they're sponsored by Sony. Other people have a huge channel based out of Asia. And, you know, when you click on their stuff, there's just tons and tons of camera gear for sale. And, you know, so these people have you know, it's like you have to ask, why the hell are they making videos? Are they there to help people? You know, everybody has to make a buck. I'm not going to begrudge anybody for trying to make it in the world, you know, put food on the table. You know, nobody could be that altruistic. I'm going to put on monk's robes and, you know, wander around telling the truth. And, you know, as long as I got a bed and a hot meal, you know, that's not very practical, obviously, you know, so you got to be helpful, but you have to ask what the hell someone's motives are. And, you know, I agree with, you should check out Zacharias' article. I'll give you a link below to his article and his video called Crop or Crap, which is funny and educational. And I think he's a cool cat that, you know, is accurate. And whatever he does, he doesn't think about me. I don't care. You know, I support him 100%. When he writes accurate stuff like this, you're damn right. I'll back him 100%, no matter what, period. You know, it's kind of interesting that he shoots for Fuji. I mean, you know, it's kind of weird that, you know, that there's certain groups, generalized groups that attract certain people. Like if I say something about Sony, people just have a hissy fit and they just start flinging poo at me. You know, if I were to say something about Fuji, which I haven't, except for the limitations of mirrorless in general. I mean, the Fuji people are like, I don't give a damn, you know, go stick it up your, stick it up your fanny, you know, I don't care. You say the same thing about Nikon, and they don't have an issue. It's kind of weird how these certain things have an aura about them. The same is true of Sigma. You insult, Sigma lenses, which are just, horrible build quality, and people say, well, I take great pictures with them. Well, that's great, but none of those Sigma lenses have survived from the past 15 years. I mean, basically 100% of the Nikon lenses have, but basically 0% of the Sigma lenses have. So anyway, here's a sensor from a DX crop, and here's one from a point and shoot. Both of them will take absolutely stunningly beautiful high-resolution 8x10 shots. So then you have to ask the question, what the hell are you going to do with it? You know, the disinformation that's out there about crop versus full frame, as I pointed out directly, the top 5 photography channels on YouTube, 2 or 3 actually, the people just always said, I'll always go with full frame. Well, I got plenty of full frame cameras, mind you, a lot of them, including the one that I'm filming this video on right now, my ugly face. And, it's great that it has no anti-aliasing filter. That's great for landscape. It's great that it's full frame, that you don't actually have to magnify the image as much to make a 20x30 print. But if you think that, the Krakatoa is going to erupt when you buy a full frame versus your D7100 crop sensor, you're just flat out wrong. And there's another video out there that I made a video about earlier this week about is bigger better? And the person argues about boulders versus pebbles. And it's like, well, if you're a bird shooter and you crop the piss, and some bird shooters actually posted on my video, like, yeah, you're damn right, finally someone said it. I've been waiting for someone to say it. If you're taking bird shots and you're cropping the piss out of the raw captured image, say in this little tiny portion of the sensor that's recorded on your SD card, there's more informational data there on the DX crop sensor than there is on the full frame. It is not about the size of the sensor, it is about how much, for example, if you're a bird shooter or wildlife shooter, is about how much informational data per square millimeter is on that damn sensor. That's what's important, because there's more information there, given a decent exposure. Do full-frame sensors have a better dynamic range? Yeah, but it's been cut a lot as far as the gap difference between the two in the past few years. Do they have better high ISO sensitivity? Yeah, they do, but SNR firmware has also taken care of a lot of that in the past few years. But there still exists a difference between low light gain and also the dynamic range in a full frame sensor, and also the lenses too. I mean, obviously you're taking, you got issues with DX cameras when you come to lenses, because there are tons and tons of full frame lenses out. You stick them on a crop body, you got an issue with the cropped relative focal. The focal's the same regardless, but you've cropped the image out. But it also is a good thing because you're using the sweet spot of the lens, so that's a huge advantage of using. Slap a 20mm on your DX crop sensor camera and you go, well, that's great, I'm using the best part of the image. Yeah, but then you end up with a 30mm relative angle of view, angle of interception. So you're effectively, not actually, but effectively using a 30mm lens on your DX crop sensor when you're using a 20mm focal length on there. Not actual focal, but relative angle of interception. So, but anyway, getting back to Zach's thing, check out his article. And I discovered this article sometime last year. I pointed people to it before, but I didn't read that particular part. He talks about this husband and wife team making a lot of videos about math. And he says, my dear, I do not have a damn to give, And then down here he says, but Zach, I have the math that says, he said, like, yummy math, I got into photography because I love math. No, you didn't. You got into it because you love photography. Composition, beautiful images, light manipulation. Here's another thing too, and none of these people really are into Greek philosophy. And the Greeks had a huge distinction. Math is important in the actual physicality, obviously, of the gear and equipment, but that's not photography. That's just strictly the gear. But you have to differentiate out math from Arithmos. When it comes to the actual art and composition, that's a separate branch. And humans today, especially Westerners, we don't really have an understanding of the difference between math and Arithmos. The Greeks did, the Indians did. The Arithmos, i.e. the proportionality, the golden section, the compositional ratios that exist within perfect compositional beauty, is incredibly important. But that ain't math. That is not math. That is Arithmos, and that is not math. Math is calculation, division, number crunching. That's math. It's got 54 megapixel. If you scale it up as a crop sensor, blah, 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 blah. Perceptual megapixel BS, which of course doesn't even exist. There's no such thing as a damn perceptual megapixel. That's all math. So we have to distinguish out the science, which is the math, the actual gear, the numbers of the gear and the lenses. Okay, that's the math. But everything else is the composition, the light manipulation, and the Arithmos. That Arithmos, of course, is undeniable. The golden section, spirals, illumination, what draws your eye, what pulls your eye, all of these things as far as the rule of thirds. All of that is not math. Well, you sure it's math because it involves... No. There's a very fine difference. That is the Arithmos of the composition that has to do with beauty, form, perfection, the proportionality in the golden section of a perfectly geometric face. And there will some people that will argue that that's math, but it's not. It's Arithmos. And that's something very different that the Greeks understood very well, but we don't really have a conception of anymore because humans have actually devolved. We have actually devolved to the point that the ancient people back then, even though they didn't have the technology, well, they did in a certain respects. We look at the pyramids and some of this old crap, and we think that that was so impossible for those old, dumb retards back in the ancient days. Aliens did it. That's how stunned we are, but, the people say, well, aliens must have done it because we couldn't do that today. Yeah, we can't do it today, but they had a different mentality back then and understanding and being able to do things that human beings have completely lost. I've discovered some of those things, especially like retroduction and other things. But anyway, check out Zach Arias' article. I think he's a cool cat, and he's right, for talking against, all these, and if someone wants to make a video about math, the math end of photography, you're talking about gear and, whipping out the slide rule, and so that's fine. Everything has its place. I don't detract from that, but that really has nothing to do ultimately with the photography, because when you go out there and grab your camera, and I know people think I sit back here behind the table and flap my lips and I don't go out and take shots, but man, I do. I grit and groan every time I get a chance to get out of this damn house and go take shots in the weather or take shots at meetings or corporate or corporate shots, which are really kind of boring, but it pays. Or product photography, which is also kind of boring but easy. All of that, you drop all that crap, and then it becomes about the composition and the light and understanding the Arithmos of perfect, near perfect. You always try to strive for perfection. Perfect shots, or as perfect as you can get them. And all of this crap becomes unimportant. Screw it. Screw the math. That stuff isn't important. And, what are you going to be printing? This notion that crop sensors are inferior and you need a full frame, each side has a limitation, but there are actually more limitations on the side of full frame in one aspect, and there are more limitations on the side of DX in other aspects. Overall, however, the gap has been so greatly narrowed that DX crop sensors they do have an advantage. The major disadvantage that they do have is in lens focal lengths, because of the relative crop factor that exists when the angle of interception is dissected from like a 20 millimeter lens, making an effective 30 millimeter. But anyway, check out the article, and I will not ramble on anymore, okay?